preparedness is a mindset. I'm a prepper, but that's not all I am, because like I say, you graduate and you become something different, and you pick an avenue. What are you going to be? Are you going to go in homestead? Are you going to be off grid? Are you going to be a farmer? What's the next step? If you're stuck in being a prepper and you've been doing it for 10, 20 years, you're missing something. You're not really prepping. You're going to build a compound. You're going to be a survivalist. Like, what is your next step? Like, you have to go from there, or you're just stagnant. And once you become stagnant, you're not prepared anymore. And even like being a survivalist, like eventually you have to graduate from that. You can't be a survivalist your whole life, because life is not about just surviving. Eventually you have to thrive. You can't bring children into a world where you're just surviving. I mean, you have to grow beyond that. That's why I said there's a kind of an umbrella of preparedness, or prepared people, prepared minded people. Like I said, it's a lifestyle. It's a culture. And a lot of people fit under that. If you're really serious about living a certain way, you begin to become under all these different things. You're a prepper, you're a homesteader, or a farmer, or a gardener, whatever. You're a survivalist. You're learning how to survive in different situations. You're learning what it takes to keep people alive. You're learning medicine, stuff like that. And also something that I'm weak on is bushcrafting. And I've been trying to practice different things with that, because that's another umbrella of preparedness too. Living in the city, people are still going to need to be able to fabricate things, to take, machines or whatever that were used for this before shift. And now how can you take that apart and apply it and make something so that you can survive, so that you can collect water, so that you can produce energy? Anyone who experiences humanity on a level to where you're pit against another human being for survival, whatever it is, it's a symptom of our broken, corrupt society. It really is. Our society's been broken and perverted for decades, my whole life, as far as I can tell. And the poorest of us have to experience that. It can force you to where you're an outlier. Once you see society for what it really is, and the worst of what it can do and what it can be. I grew up in an abusive home. Man, my dad used to beat the shit out of us, man. But he grew up that way. His dad beat the shit out of him. He was a non-vet. He still has flashbacks and nightmares from the shit he went through in Nam as a Marine, a grunt. It fucked him up, and then he fucked me and my brother up, but there's healing that comes from that. But without getting into all that, I said that to say that once you experience that and you see society for what it is, you can become an outlier. And that's what I was touching on that last video I dropped, being an outlier. And that's where I was leading with all the graduating beyond just being a prepper, because of what we're seeing now. We all saw Joe Biden's 1984 V for Vendetta speech, but I think they're doing this on purpose. They don't do anything on accident. Everything they do is intentional. And I think they do one thing that will touch on many things that they're planning. I think they want us to collapse. That's why you have to graduate beyond just being a prepper. You can't just prep for 1 or 2 years. You got to think long term, man. You got to think, okay, I've got 2 years of food. That gives me 2 years of time where we don't have to worry about the basic necessity of life. We have food and water covered. What can I do in those 2 years so that me and my family aren't just surviving, we're thriving? And that goes into what Hutch does with community building. You got to have people, man. Pop B talks about this all the time. All of us try to be hard asses and say if someone shows up at our house wanting food, we're going to kick them to the curb. Pop B has a different scenario in mind. Prep people. Use them. Do they have skills? He's not saying, be best friends with them and bring everybody into your circle, but he's got a point. We're going to need each other, especially if they're planning to collapse us. What is their plan for us after they collapse us? And let me clarify. I'm not telling you not to vote in election or anything. I'm going to vote in every election until we can't anymore. But at this point, I'm voting for the candidate who's going to mitigate our circumstances and give us more time to prepare. Because in the end, they're all a part of the same corrupt system. And no matter who wins, if Trump wins in 2024 and Ron DeSantis is his running mate, and then Ron DeSantis does, we get 12 years of them. At the end, we're still in the same corrupt system with the same people in charge and control. And I don't think they're going to let that happen anyway. Look what they're doing, everything they can to stop the man from running, man. Let's wake up. Yes, let's vote for the right people, but at the same time, let's get ready for the worst scenario possible. Best economy in 50 years under Trump. They crashed it in less than a year. You know what it is? People are stuck in the cult of the United States of America instead of realizing what it's supposed to be and what it used to be. And it hasn't been for 100 years. What we're preaching is not giving up Giving up on this current system? Absolutely. This current system is not America. If you want to work and stay in this system, you've given up. You're the one who has quit. You said, oh, we'll never beat their system. We might as well work within it and see what we can do. We've been doing this for 50 years. The Democrats put their guy in there, and then the Republicans put their guy in there, and then the Democrats. You've been doing this for 50 years. They're all the same. They're all in cahoots. Two political parties put themselves in power and made you believe that they're the only choices. You're the one that's given up and accepted your place in the matrix, man. We're just trying to wake you up. That's what a black pill is. Wake up. You know what's next, right? If they control your water, the next is they'll tax you for the amount of water you use, since they're monitoring how much water comes out of it. And you're going to have to pay for the water that comes out of the ground from your land. Y'all want to preserve this system? Like, who wants to be a part of this? Our society is sick. It really is. Think about it. I mean, we talk about being free in America, but I mean, are we free from debt? Are we free from worry? Are we free from stress? Are we getting up every morning and spending 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day doing something that we love and that brings us fulfillment and joy that we don't have to bring home and just, that's our society. Our entire society is based on that. For us being laborers and not being happy. That should be the point of incarcerating someone once they've broken the law, to rehabilitate them so they can be a functioning member of society. Our system is nowhere near that. It never has been. They come out more hardened and brutal. And then when they go out and try to get a job and actually try to lift themselves out of that, the system is designed to keep them down. Like, it's hard for a felon to get a job. I know my brother-in-law has been a felon since he was 18. It's so hard for him to find work. That whole thing with Brittany Griner, you know, getting locked up because she had weed in Russia, and they want to exchange like a violent Russian arms dealer for her. The first thing they should have done is released everyone in the United States who's locked up because of weed. That's the first step. Then you can trade someone for her, because that's what's fucking fair. I'm tired of this elitism, especially Kamala Harris. Man, she incarcerated so many people because of marijuana and bragged about it.
Yeah.
And then you're going to go on and say it wasn't a big deal, and how she smoked weed and laugh about it and stuff. You get stuck in that model of what society says we're all supposed to be happy with. And when you get those things, you realize this isn't making me happy. So you're like, well, maybe I need more. I need the next big TV, the next big phone, the next big car. You have to wake up. It goes back to what we've said before, man. You got to go after the culture. You got to change what in your own little family culture, what's going to make you happy? What's really going to make your family happy? Because these gadgets, these different status things, they don't make my kids happy. They don't make my wife happy. There's enough money out there for everybody to be wealthy and well off and have happiness. I think the problem is there's a hoarding of opportunity. The people at the highest levels have all the opportunity to do whatever they want, to make how much money they want, and they can share it with a few people if they want to. It's like, okay, well, here's your opportunity. You go make money now. Imagine all of us, man, all of us on this panel, folks in this chat, how talented all you folks are, man. If you had the opportunity, you could be millionaires and billionaires. It's hard to find that opportunity because we have to go to 9-to-5 jobs just to pay the freaking bills. I'm gonna bring up something here that's controversial. I'm not against the mission of this group. I used to support them greatly. It's just the grassroots people who raised $90 million on the death of black folks, and now they're under scrutiny because people want to know what they did with that money. I'm talking about the BLM people. A lot of the BLM chapters are doing great things in their communities. You guys should really look into it. BLM is a legit organization. Okay, they raised $90 million, and everyone's like, "What'd you do with the money?" And it's not racism. It's a legitimate question. Do you know what you could do with $90 million if your mission is to help black folks? The infrastructure you could build in black communities. You could buy businesses. You could go into these communities and hire black folks and help them, get out of poverty. You could renovate places. You could start your own business. $90 million. You could. And how many people would invest in a BLM business? Like, you could just create revenue if that was your real mission. Right here on YouTube, man, there are so many talented black folks on YouTube. Artists, musicians, actors, creators, inventors, all over YouTube. They could scour YouTube for these people, invest in them, and give them the opportunity to do something, man. I know a lot of y'all love Trump, and that's okay. But I want you to hear this. He's not your savior. He's really not, okay? I'll vote for him if he runs, but he's not your savior. savior. Stop looking for politicians to save you. Save yourself. Our country's big. Think about how big and separated we really are. It don't seem that way because we can do stuff like this, but we really are separated. I just don't see how we all come together in a way to where the federal government doesn't shut us down immediately. They're listening to us right now. My plan is to make millions of us all across the country outliers, to where it doesn't matter what happens. We're so prepared. Anything could happen tomorrow, and we're already connected. We all already know where how to get in contact with each other without this, without the internet. And no matter what comes our way, we have our local group, and we're prepared to fight back, to survive. Not an army of millions, but a million armies all over our country, of just people who are fed up and just don't want to be a part of their system anymore, and are making moves to get their family out of the system, so they're not beholden to it when they collapse it. It doesn't matter that the system collapsed. I wasn't a part of it anyway. I'm producing my own energy, my own fuel, my own food. There's members in our groups who are doctors, nurses, paramedics. We have medicines. We know how to make new medicines. All these different things. We know how to fabricate all these different things and make our own stuff. That's where I'm trying to get to. So when they collapse their system, it doesn't even affect me. So that when I need to go fight, I know that my family, my kids are taken care of. That's my plan. At this point, if it's going to be saved, elections aren't going to do it for all the reasons we just mapped out. I think a convention of states might do it. That's the only shot they got at preserving this. But I don't. Even if they could get it together, I still think it would be fake, and the wrong people would be in charge of it. The evil was done, and the people who did it are dead, and now we have to deal with their mess. I'm gonna say some stuff, gonna piss people off on both sides of the argument. For one thing, slavery existed in America long before any white man ever put a toe here. Almost all of native tribes enslaved each other. They warred against each other. They massacred each other. They would enslave each other. One of my favorite people to read about is Quanah Parker. He was one of the most brutal, deadliest Comanche warband leaders in history. He led a brutal campaign against the United States of America and the Army. I mean, I think he was a patriot, but at the same time, he would enslave other tribes, the Kiowa, the Apache, and torture them, rape their women. They would enslave white people, black people, whoever they came across. Slavery was here for a long time. I would say over the past few years, slavery has been brought back to the forefront. But the thing is, people do make a good point about it. When it comes as far as the people who are descended from those who were enslaved, we were talking about opportunity. They started from a place that a lot of the other people didn't. Their ancestors didn't have opportunity to build wealth and then pass on to them like others did. And that's a fair point. Talking about the Native Americans and the entire reservation system. I mean, I think there's like 500 some federally recognized reservations in the United States of America, unless I'm wrong. But I've only been to a handful of them and witnessed what it's like on those reservations for those who choose to. They don't have to live on those reservations anymore. Back in the day, they had to. It was illegal for them to leave those spots. And the government, if they found gold or a resource on their reservation that the government wanted to take for themselves, they would pass a law and cut it in half, or they would go to war and massacre them. I mean, that did happen, not too long ago at all. And so that's why there's a lot of outrage that comes, especially from people who kind of remember it still. The problem is in the reservation system is since it's legal to have casinos and stuff like that, the reservation has the opportunity to make billions of dollars of revenue for themselves as long as they give the government their part. And then each member of the tribe might get $2,000 a month, a stipend, and that's their payment. It's a welfare system, and it sets them up. It keeps them just above subsistence. And so there's no incentive for them to go out and make their own way and be even more successful. They lack the opportunity. So while there could be members on the tribal council who are living, high on the hog, some of them are millionaires. The bulk members of the tribe can just be living in poverty, and it's trailer parks, and they don't have electricity and all these different things, but it's not like that on all reservations. At Fort Apache, the White Mountain Apache Reservation, is a paradise. And the only reason it is, this is an interesting story. When the government was rounding up all the different Apache bands, Geronimo and Cochise and the Chiricahua, the White Mountain Apache lived on a mountain in the middle of the desert. It was just surrounded by 100 miles of desert in any direction. But when you got up on the mountain, it's like 8,500 elevation. That's over a mile high. It was always like 80, 85 degrees up there, even when it was 120 degrees at the desert. And so the government just didn't know they were there. They were able to live out on their mountain. They had everything they needed. They had mountain spring, like huge lakes that are on top of the mountain full of trout and all kinds of things. Wild horses that live. They still to this day, there's a herd of wild horses that live on that mountain, man. They're called the gray herd. They're beautiful. Elk, deer, you name it. It was on that mountain. So they were able to live out their lives as outliers because the government didn't know they existed. Then once they found them, they was like, oh, well, that's your reservation. There's no gold in your mountain. You're good. So to this day, if you go there, they're Apache, man. They don't care. They have a very Wild West attitude on Fort Apache, but they don't live like I've seen in other reservations here on the East Coast and other places I've been. Like the Cherokee Reservation here in North Carolina in the mountains, man. You can drive by and you see all the tourism and stuff. But if you actually go to where the Cherokee people live, man, a lot of them live in squalor. Not all of them. I'm not trying to try not to generalize with that, but it all goes back to that's what they was forced into. Said all that to say, here we are now. None of us did that. None of my ancestors did, unless you can prove it. Even the white people that owned slaves in our country, it was a very minuscule part of the population that were actually wealthy enough to own the slaves. Most white people were poor because they couldn't get a job, because where they lived, all the rich people had slavery. They didn't need your labor. And so you were stuck trying to figure out, it's a convoluted, it's not black and white. That's my point. There's not just one right or wrong thing. It's very dense and it takes a lot of discussion, and everyone has to be honest on both sides. That's what I hate about all the time. All you hear is, oh, you're white, you own slaves, your ancestors owned slaves, you oppressed my people. Well, how do you know that? How do you know my ancestors just came here? I'm first generation American from Europe or something. How do you know who my ancestors were just by looking at the color of my skin? That's racist. That is the very definition of racism. The first step is finding that common ground, because I really believe most average people in the world, we all want the same things out of life. I'll say this. I don't think any of us are actually prepared for what's coming. I know I'm not. I mean, I'm preparing every day, and I know y'all are, but I don't think any of us know what hardships are about to befall all of us. We're comfortable, man, and we like our comfort. There's nothing wrong with the comforts of our modern society. It's the cultural part of it that's making it so sick. But that's why I think about my older kids, man. They have no idea what's coming, even though I've preached it to them their whole lives. It's gonna be rough, man. It's like